Sanje che danzo ge chonam la zonjo pardo da ni kya sunje la ge jin so ye pe chonam ge dola penjre san ye ndo para sho sanje che danzo ge chonam la zonjo pardo da ni kya sunje la ge jin so ye pe chonam ge Rola pendira sanje ndo parasa sanje chenon zoge chonam kanjo pardo dani chaksanche age jinzo yebe sonam ge rola pendira sanje ndo parasa semjen tamje dewa dan devi yudan dembara Semjen damje dunga dunga ye gyudan dawara gyud. Semjen damje dunga mebe dewa dan minda wara gyud. Semjen damje nyirin chadan nidan da nyamla nebara gyud. Semjen damje dewa dan dewe gyudan dembara gyud. Semjen damje dunga ye gyudan dawara gyud. Semjen damje dunga men dewa na minda waraju. Semjen damje nyirin chadan nidan da anyam la ne baraju. Semjen damje dewa na dewe gyudan den baraju. Semjen damje dunga ye gyudan da waraju. Semjen damje dunga mebe dewa na minda waraju. Semjen damje nyirin chadan nidan da nyamla nebara gyurji. Semjen damje dewa na dewe gyudan dembara gyurji. Semjen damje dunga ye gyudan dawara gyurji. Semjen damje dunga mebe dewa na minda wara gyurji. Semjen damje nyirin chadan nidan da nyamla nebara Sanje jindu medembu doegenanda jinlai chebarasho Yedam Guru Ranamenda Labanya Atayami.
Until enlightenment, I go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the accumulation of the practices of giving and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Until enlightenment, I go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the accumulation of the practices of giving and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Until enlightenment, I go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the accumulation of the practices of giving and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings be endowed with happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from joyful bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. May all sentient beings be endowed with happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from joyful bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. May all sentient beings be endowed with happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from joyful bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. This ground spread with incense, adorned with strewn flowers, Mount Meru, the 4 continents and the sun and the moon, I imagine as a Buddha land, and by offering it to you, may all living beings enjoy this pure land. Thus, meeting the teaching of the peerless teacher is due to the spiritual mentor's kindness. I dedicate this virtue for all living beings to be cared for by excellent spiritual friends. Yaram Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryata Yami.
Okay, doing what the temperature, the Koran, the Lord Chata. Yeah, that Kangala, somebody touched the lesser. Tang Tangazo Junjugi, Tapage, Zajin, Nyamba Umsulta, morning. Di chat, Nenga Chimbu chat. Matu Semnala, Ramagajo, Vajiniga pet, Topang Danda in Bahamakoche, and he Chape Wongage Ranchola Cha, Jinchola Dang, and Nirin Chadan, that they won't go. That country, Janju Sem to Bala, Lotanium to be at the Missiva Ketchambore. Lotanium to the Gala, that Junju Nalato, so a packet, Vajin Yamba to be at it. That Lotanium to Fanchis Gore. The Missiva Ketchambore.
So first of all, Tashi Delay, everyone, to you this afternoon. And so now in our study of the way of the Bodhisattva, we are focused on something that is a really crucial point. And that is the meditation, the habituation on equalizing self and others, seeing the equality of self and others. And this is something that actually mentally in our mind at this point, it's something we don't necessarily consider. We don't consider others equal to ourselves. Actually, the way it goes is that due to kind of a fixation, this ego really biases partial towards itself, very partial. We're very, very partial due to attachment to ourselves. And we have an aversion to the other side, anything that is other than ourselves, meaning others. So we have this partiality to ourselves and a bias against others. And this is something mentally that is pretty firmly embedded at this point. And so we have to work really hard to find equal ground here, to really find some equanimity where there's no difference between self and other, equal nature. And so here in the text, this equalizing of self and others, we have these trainings that are very crucial to reverse this so that we equalize others and ourselves.
Subject na dajin yamba to yada ani tundu da yebrasheba ni jeni yon digala ta tunda liji goni jik sunyada yebrasheba da yebrasheba la subject chimbu ji sumtam yongo duas ji subject che ji tam gongore ji na ne wo o
gepechene
o yebrasheba la subject chimbo ji or ji karre zidigala rajan yamba tonshe bas rajan yamba gomsul gombe payins de ta rajan yamba tonshe bas ye de solo kandini yongdo gulchukoji ni tandapata kanje yadan tu padu rajan yambe tonshe pateta Karsa Gomsul di Chimbare, Rajanyamba Gomsul, Rajanyamba Gomsul.
Di Gomsa, so
Gomsul de
Dunsanipa.
Oh, Tunzingibade. Penninga Chambore, the Yanayandu, some tangores. Jaza, Tilape, non subject Mada Mampuyor de Yinayan Tontate, Rajanyamba Gomsul de. And Rangi Dungal Samutane, any dungal de pangruin ba samde jengi dungal de pangruin ba samdang goya yo rangi dewa lenuin ba samdane jengi dungal yang jengi dewa yang tangdulene ni du goya so pemisben ne ga chimbu was diji samlo koreina any ngada kyosing the yongya mi do.
And so within this section of the text, in these verses, there has been kind of a brief overview of equalizing self and other. And then it gets into some rather detailed verses and detailed explanation and trainings. And in the section where it is more extensive and gets into things in more detail, there are 4 major focuses, or 4 major kind of subject matters, kind of like sub, kind of like little subjects within that one subject. So there are 4 major points. One of the major points is understanding that which is called equalizing self and other, and then actually how to train, how to meditate, how to habituate in equalizing self and others. And in this particular the point of the actual practices and meditation on habituations that we can train ourselves in equalizing self and others, this is a very, very crucial and important section, kind of a subsection. And it goes from verses 91 through 106, where it actually takes, with these different verses, they actually give us trainings and reasonings that we can practically apply as trainings for gaining this equanimity, this equalness of self and others. And therefore, this is really, these are really crucial verses, and one should review them again and again. Review them and then have some personal self-reflection about the meanings of these. In a nutshell, some of the points that were visited here are ways to meditate and work with situations. For example, when we see others suffering just like our own, and therefore we don't want suffering, and we know that others don't want suffering. And so we actually work with others suffering the same very way we would with our own suffering. And in the same way, we know that we want to find happiness. And we know that that's exactly what others want as well. And so therefore, we then pursue things in a way where we're also pursuing others' happiness, not just our own. So in this way, these are actual trainings that we can take up so that we're accomplishing things for others the very same way we would for ourselves. It's not different, it's the same.
Tako jingi tonchi wade ko rangla sonam lab chambuchi sa gore ani pendo ya chambuchi gore jinji da dajin nyamba matumna chanju ki sem singindi ke gerwa khona gyae amarwa jen la dangsem kesa jila ninji ki gmido niji makena chanju sem ki gmarwa jesa phage lo tangyum tuya de pe misiba ke chambucha diore Rajanyamba to be a day. That Tanda Padu, Rajanyamba Rajanyamba to be a Suldisari. That Tirin is on the Rajanyambe Payun de Shigor, Pentokari, Payun Carrior, is it? Payun de Shigore. The Missiva Ketchimbuchadiore. Was a similar nimbo tangore.
So if you begin to really think like this. It's really quite beneficial if you begin to think in that way. Now, let's really think about what this means, this distinction that we've put on this word other. We have self and others, this whole other category. When we now make our agenda about others, what is the benefit here? What actually, if we think about what happens when we have a shift where our agenda is now about others, actually this accomplishes our own merit. It is very meritorious for oneself. And not only that, it provides a lot of benefit. There's a lot of benefit actually that happens here. However, if we don't work to establish that distinction and now that line of equanimity where there is a sameness, there is a one taste, it doesn't matter, be it self or others, there's this single equanimous taste about it. If we don't establish that, then there's no possibility of establishing the mind of bodhicitta. Because if you think about it, if you don't have concern and caring for others, if they're not part of your focus at all, and actually we kind of, certainly don't have any preferences, but more of an aversion to others, then there's no way that compassion will arise. And if compassion doesn't, the mind, a compassionate mind doesn't arise, and then there's no way to ever really establish bodhicitta. And so what's important that we establish is and accomplish is equanimity within the mind, complete equal taste within the mind. And so up until this point in the text, we've looked at the different reasoning on why and how we can use different trainings and using different logics, how to establish seeing self and others as the same. So that part we have completed. And at this point, we pick up on looking at what are the benefits. We're discussing here, what are the benefits when we now go about our life in a way that we have complete equanimity between, be it for ourselves or others. And so these very important parts are discussed from this point on.
펜토데 가리어레 딱 장주기 샘께 마케데 간제 로탄년 투마투땅 니지 슈추모랑기 이게 마케라 시다라레도 단 장주기 샘 마케네 끈 가리어레 송니도벨 타와케나야 장주기 샘 마케나 상게가 탑람균이요 말에 딘디가라 장주기 샘데기 짐베 똥니도벨 타와테기 시립기 님보치고 시립 마파바 상게 탑세메 인자 자잔 장주기 샘길라 마케나 가서 상게가 탑세미도와 딘디가라 가지게 전부 쉬우차도와 어디 삼당과래.
So there's something here we have to think more about. And we have to look more into the transformative quality of seeing all humanity as equal to oneself, all living beings as equal to oneself. And what exactly are those qualities? Well, actually, whether one becomes enlightened or not depends on bodhicitta. And bodhicitta depends on seeing others as equal and having compassion for them. Our own enlightenment relies on whether or not we have compassion for all sentient beings. And without compassion, there is no bodhicitta. And so if we don't have bodhicitta, so if we don't have an altruistic mind that really focuses on others, then even if we have realized emptiness, we might realize emptiness, but without bodhicitta, there is no way to be enlightened. There is no way to achieve the level of Buddhahood. This depends on a mind that is fused with the altruistic attitude and realizes emptiness. These two things together. When one's mind is infused with bodhicitta and one has the realization of emptiness, then this is the way the cognitive obscuration is completely removed. And it is the very and only method for attaining enlightenment, Buddhahood. And so without considering others as equal and actually taking on their purpose, there is no way to have compassion. There's no way to have developed bodhicitta, and there is no way to be enlightened. So think about that.
다 인디가라 다 드림이 zonda ngaso 자진 냠바 곰데 파인 다 파인다는 나세기 subject nga 연구하래 nga 연구도 잠깐씩 디시고래 다 자진 냠나 펜도 가려래 자진 냠베 펜도 가려래 가래 펜도 그래 때까지 디시고래 펜용 가려래 때문에로 와 자진 냠바지 고메이나 젠라 당셈 끼그 말해 엔 젠기 또 야침 붙여 두고 그래 장주기 샘기 냠는 대당 배 시국이 손음 납청부 사고 그래 어다 심전 탐 저기 돈 제라 나로니 세면나라 차당데 쿠쿠뇽부지 구구도 징바지 징다발라 땅부 사자데 쿠뇽부지 데니 루터데 추드든 로야 닝지보 진 로엔 로야서 구구도 어때나진데 차당 무슨 쿠뇽부지는 매아즈니 데니베 지 서지다마서나 셈다마서나 쿠뇽부지니 아니 쿠뇽부지나 젠라 당셈기 그 말에 랑조라 차셈기 그 말에 이빼 미스고 개침부 차디오래
And so here again, we pick up with investigating what are the benefits of equalizing self and others. How does that help? What will be benefited? And it's really true to look at these things. What changes, what benefits are on the horizon if we now have an attitude where we see all humanity as equal? We see all living beings as equal. What changes? Well, first of all, there is no orientation of a preference to one's own things that happen to oneself, and not really caring, being ambivalent, or even averse to caring about what happens to others. So this goes away. And then actually the ability to help others and be of benefit to others really takes off. This really, really grows. Then also our bodhicitta, the altruistic mind that we have been working to cultivate, really also begins to be firmly established. And so therefore, for this reason, our actions now become extremely meritorious. This is really a great accumulation of merit, so our merit really grows. And so, you know, when we think about our every action being for the purpose of all living beings, then this is a mindset that is wide open, that is just so broad and all-encompassing. Actually, if we think about where we may have started, which is really a lot of self-fixation, this is a very narrow-minded, very tight, narrow-minded, very limited in its possibilities mindset. And now we're taking it and we're actually opening our minds to this amazing, equanimous, open mindset that lays a foundation, actually, that when one is coming from a place like this, there's no possibility that you can ever be self-absorbed and other-averse. It just does not grow within this kind of a field or foundation.
어다 나중 냠바데 줌나 펜도 땅보데 가려르잖아. 펜도 땅보데 진튼 지도 줄와라. 둥알 첨보메 바라리. 쟁기던 라 타지도 렉 돈다 제와라. 둥알 균이 강알요 말에스. 데 펜도 땅보데.
And so if we think about when we have accomplished this training, this establishment of now being completely equal about be it self or other, the first benefit is that we are able to really ultimately accomplish others' benefit, and that whatever it is that we need to do to help someone, it'll never be difficult for us. It'll be no problem for us to help others, no matter what it takes.
사회치대다 야단 듬바데를 솔로가 야단 듬바데 대사로 균이 꼼기르베스 쟁기 동알 지가베 뱀메 소롱 왕반 주발따라 남메 파양 주버 루르세 숭도와 다테 кар라 버레 대사로 균이 꼼기르베스데 다신 냠바 곰발라 꼼디 인자 곰바 연대긴지기 아니 쟁기 동알 배 셀레라 주발라 가베고니 주구르 마다데 이 네용마르세 치den게데 용마레스 배나 차잖아 소탄지 이동와 메도 배만나 초바 연대긴디나 낭바도 가베고니 주구르 와시 장주 세보 따따 나진냠발라 시라게 로꼼추청이 연대도 아니 배 쟁기 동안 세월라 냐완 나르메 나라페 망분 되고 주나 교배균이 말해서 숨으래.
And so now we turn to the text and look at the root verse that explains this very thing. And this is verse number 107 in the 8th chapter, where it reads, "Those whose minds are practiced in this way, whose joy it is to soothe another's ills, will venture into hell of unrelenting pain as swans sweep down upon a lotus lake." And so in this first line, it says, "Are practiced, whose minds are practiced in this way." This means one who has accomplished equalizing oneself with others, having complete equanimity, seeing all as very the same. For those that have accomplished this, when others have difficulty, actually it is their delight, no matter how difficult it is, to help that other person or that other situation, they're delighted to do it. It's their pleasure to do it. They don't lament saying that they can't accomplish it. Not only that, just as like a beautiful, beautiful lake that is covered in lotuses, and swans love to, enter these and float upon a lotus-covered lake, just as swans would delight in landing on a beautiful lotus-covered lake, those that have their minds are already habituated to this kind of equanimity, even if they were to have to go to the hells of unrelenting pain to benefit others, it would still be no problem. It would be their pleasure to do so.
벤질로서 최긴게 숭도와 라마 첩에나라 셈젠 레레치양 나르메테 맹행 깔빠갸스 네케장 니제 미쇼 장주 초존베 존디 퍼진서 버징길로서 숭도와 에 장주 세바데도 에 간디지나 셈젠 찌게 돈달라 갈바 먹고 나르멜레 내고 주나 이페 든디 네투브레스
So the
니제 정원도 기르나 셈진 찌기 돈달라 빼 갈바만 보에 네 든디 냐베 메나라 데는 데 저투그레스 숭도와
So they don't act surpodo yanaya di seek surpomendo palcher lama chopa year
Well, Lama Chapa ina Pagi di Parjin Tugunan Sundi Parjindre. Simjan Richiam Narmepe, Mengan Kappa Yatson Nerkejam, Niji Mikos, Niji Wangi, Pe Kua Legimare, Niji Jamandu Gurinza, Niji Wangi Sem Kyobo de Umares, Chanju Chotzen Base, any Pe Chanju Chote, Sangi Koparwa, Sangi Kopan Tuatondala, any Pe Simjin Jingi Tunchela, Giva Yomares, Sumata, Sundi Parjin de Nipe, Tugu Races Mura, Tatari, Indu.
And so, and so within the Guru Puja, within the Guru Puja, there is one stanza that comes within the section on diligent effort. That really has some bearing here, that says that for every single sentient being, I will experience the hells of unrelenting torment.
Mengen kapa yatsun yoki men nangla. Tape nyawi men nangla pe kapa mambo negucho na kiba yomaris labta.
And that there would be no problem actually to abide there for many eons. And through the power of great Bodhicitta, I will never become saddened or disenchanted. For this is the way to attain the great accomplishment of enlightenment, Buddhahood, the supreme enlightenment, Buddhahood. So I will never regret. And so actually, Bodhicitta really has, a great, great power, because as it said here in this stanza, that when one has such a sincere and deep caring about others, as it said here, that even for one single sentient being, I will go to, the unrelenting hells and stay for eons. And why is it actually that someone could be able to do this, be able to aspire and do like this? It is the power of bodhicitta. Under the influence of bodhicitta, one can accomplish such amazing thing for the benefit of others.
Pain nipati karere zedugala dajanyamba tuna devala chodu be jindun jupas deva pe gabigani ni pe jindun chela gabigani jugures odate sungware sholoka yadang getere doa Semchen namni trolwana gawe gyatsu kanyimba. Tengi kini chomina tarbandaba chichi chaazar sungudwa. Wadate karza gore. Tape rajinyamba tumdegen chanchu yang kanza chigi. Pe semchen jen ani be sipale truwa, kurwale truwa, jendun chela. Pe gabe gani pe Tendi dunga gyatsulan jutu resi. Gabegani jutu resi. Karzana jenden cheba ina choni zogorwa. Randen zo, jenden zogore. Cheza tendi indikala ta ranchi pe tondala tharbatu yade. Ani pe tendi ki tharbatu bela yune gabo chiki marla vare. Tendi chanchu sabate zuke. Ranchi pe tontala tarbatu yade. Karzana ranchi pe tonta tarbatu yena randun tubgor de jindun tubgo marwa. Tindi nyande dala chepe nyande lare. Nyande cheka labre. Randun jibo tubare jindun tubyo marwa. Oda teri. Tamisiba nimbusungdwa.
So in the next stanza, we look at a second benefit of what is helpful, beneficial in terms of equalizing self and other. What's the second benefit that's looked at here? And that is that actually, in order to, for the purpose of helping others, it is their greatest delight. Really, it is the one thing that satisfies them and really delights them. And this is, helping others. This is their true delight. And in the text, in verse 108, the ocean-like immensity of joy arising when all beings will be freed. Will this not be enough? Will this not satisfy the wish for my own freedom? What is that to me? And so again, if we look at a person who has accomplished, already attained, seeing all others as equal, has already accomplished this equalizing self and others, they will work so hard for the purpose of living beings in existence to liberate them. And so here they're working for the purpose of other beings, to liberate them. And as it says, and for them this is like an ocean of joy. This is their greatest delight, as it says in our text, the ocean-like immensity of joy. And so actually, there's two things being accomplished here. They're accomplishing others' benefit, working to liberate others. But at the same time, they're accomplishing their own purpose, because this is benefiting others, which is an accumulation of merit, and this is an accumulation of merit that helps oneself. So this is really working towards two purposes, working towards self and others. But then again, here it says, working for others' liberation, when all beings will be freed. This is the focus. And we notice that they're not looking to liberate themselves. And why is it that someone who's already equalized others and self isn't delighted in one's own liberation? This is actually not the focus. And as well, this accomplishes for that person what's called non-abiding nirvana, or a partial nirvana. So it is not a full nirvana, partial. So only half. You're only halfway there. Because if you're wishing for and working towards your own liberation, you've left out that whole other category of others. So you're only focusing on half. You've actually then forsaken all other sentient beings. And so this is not a true, authentic aspiration.
Junju Mayimba yang labdis junji zandiore. Labdis, labakuni dipa. Wata tena la karsan sunduzana, Romet Tarpachi jazz sunre. Romet Tarpachi jazz. Ta Nirangi Tarbade, Kalada Masono, Troamebas, Romendegi, Troamendegas de Jires, Kalada Masona. Ani Chanjuki Sem Gomne, Sagi Kopantovada, Pe. Kalada mason toa chimbo chadire jendela pen misiba gabe gonna tuya jungorwa wata chepe nyande de rome tharpares rome wasodiji kalada masona rome wasodiji be toa mendegin kalade zan mazana zaza de jibarwa yule desem pengyo marwa wata teri indugala nyarang sinde nga ran chinjin de dultugo mara ran chinjin tangdo lengorwa dijene suso ani pe tarpatu gorwa ngarang sangyanas jimpe jinjingi phamatazo yarwartor simchen thamje yarwartor ne tarpatu gorwa mun rome tarpa chagdo ate
So also Shantideva has said in another text, kind of the complete compendium text, that actually one wishing for those who wishing for a bodhisattva to wish for one's own liberation, there's no taste for that whatsoever. And what does this mean? Actually, someone who, you know, who is a real bodhisattva, who really has bodhicitta, then they have, you know, what do they have a taste for? They have a taste for complete enlightenment. For their own self-liberation is not appealing whatsoever. It is tasteless for them. It's like eating food that has absolutely no taste. Like putting food in your mouth that doesn't satisfy you at all. It's not so helpful. It's not beneficial. What really satisfies them is really quenching and satisfying, fulfilling for them, is to achieve enlightenment. And so for these, for example, you know, for the, you know, those that are on the level of only accomplishing their own liberation, those who are on that path, they're thinking about my liberation, my liberation. And because they only care about my liberation, the ego focus that they have and the like self-centeredness and self-cherishing that they have, they actually kind of put up with it. They encourage it. They work with it. It's not, you know, something that they discourage, because they're only working for their own purpose. And in that way, actually, what they're doing is they're forsaking all other mother sentient beings. All of their mother, father sentient beings are forsaken.
자사 송니토벨 타와테기 잔지 머리 베님부체네 아니 베 진지 머리 바데 까투브레 디왕게타 녀몬을 쫄네 타바토브레 란진진 단다까 요마레 까르잖아 장주기 셈귤리케 요마르와 디인디갈라코 장주 셈귤라 마키디갈라 시두기님본 로투고 마레 시두기님본 로마투디갈라 타페 칼파망부제네 베 하게 냐랑 나좀에 디부제네 두스네 주인양 주와 초지롱는 루인도 누구와래 인디갈라페 디 시다게 내가 전부 차디거래 제가 남바상제베 윤이 셰연도갈라 다 개바첨비 윤이 셰연도갈라 란친진 장주기 셈딩기 란친진가 송이토벨 타와데 렘버즘베 딘진가 티니가 냠술라와라 데네 아니 니네베 냠데 상기 고팡라 드트위야지 숨고어와
And so in regards to realizing the wisdom that realizes emptiness, the view of emptiness, then this realizing the view of emptiness, then self-clinging and ignorance are eliminated. So self-clinging and ignorance, self-clinging and ignorance are eliminated, but self-cherishing has not been eliminated. So the self-cherishing is eliminated through the accomplishment of bodhicitta. And when one has not yet had bodhicitta arise in the mind stream, then there is still a level of self-cherishing. Until we have real bodhicitta arise in the mind stream, then we will still have cognitive obscurations. And so as long as we have cognitive obscurations, the level of accomplishment that we will achieve is the level of accomplishment of an arhat. And the arhat still, for very, very long periods of time, then they abide in their own personal peace that is not yet full enlightenment. So because they still have cognitive obscurations. And so this is a very, very crucial point for us to understand. And within the scriptures and texts of the Mahayana, of the great vehicle, we learn that the antidote to self-cherishing is to have bodhicitta arise in the mind. And the antidote to clinging to a real and substantial reality is the view, realizing the view of emptiness. When we bring these two together and we have both bodhicitta in the mind stream and a realization of emptiness, we now come to the level of enlightenment, full enlightenment Buddhahood, which is non-abiding nirvana. And so practicing both of these, having both bodhicitta and emptiness as focus and practicing on both of these, we can see really how crucially important it is. Kale, taptang, shut up.
Taptang talwe, sherabni chingwa wos. Taptang talwe sherabina. Taptang talwe janjuki semdang, nijidan, dended maldembe, and if sherab kandijina, the be sherabde, and be chingere, chingje chadiores. Pena, dongi dobel sherab nyendu debi nyanenjene, trabata drurede, tarun jiwi nyangde ledi yorwa. Sangi kopantu tuya marwa. Oda Shirab Tantrabe Tani Chingwa was it? Shirab Tape Tantana, Tongitobe Shirab Gula Makina, Danzi Maribel Nimbochit Huma, Danzi Maribel and Nimbomadan, Janjuki Sem Yanenjinayang, Tape Sonam Gilapchimbuch Soguru Mato, Corona to Maresu Sumri. Kanga Tinigabe, Kagatalsona Chinjere. Ta Niga Nyamdo Yanenjena. And
so the Buddha himself within the sutras has said that when one has wisdom void of method, without method, then this actually becomes one becomes shackled. One is stuck. One is shackled. And this means when it says wisdom, meaning perhaps one has a realization and understanding of the view, but one is devoid of any bodhicitta or compassion. This is like being chained. This is like being shackled. One can go nowhere with this. Because we see that even those that have a deep realization of the view, all that they attain is the peace of nirvana. It's a very, very peaceful state of a partial liberation, but they have not attained Buddhahood, right? They've not attained Buddhahood. They're stuck. They're chained at that point. And so, therefore, when we're free, if we're devoid, so therefore, if we're devoid of these methods and we have wisdom, Geshe Tamadila Sharap Dangdro?
Sharap Tatawe Tabni Chingwa was Sharap Tatawe Tap Janjuki Semina, they change Chabares. Corvala told to Mares. Sonam Lapchimbuch Sagar Mata, Janda, Corvala told to Marlabre.
La so Tongi Ane
Janjukis, Tongi Zamotoma Lue Mazim Janjuki Semde, Yan Chinche de Labre.
Oh, lasso. And then Di doi nangla ani sangyeki ani
탑다다가 셔럽니
umpare.
칭하고 셔럽전다 따위 탑니 칭하고 송리 니가
And then further on, then the Buddha said, and as well to have wisdom that is, or to have wisdom, or to have method that is free of wisdom as well, one is shackled. And this is because that although one may have these methods, one may have bodhicitta and compassion, and so this may then bring one to some type of freedom from samsara and may bring great merit. It's very meritorious. One is free from the wisdom of the view. One is free from emptiness. So as well, one doesn't have both, so one cannot attain full enlightenment. So as well, to have wisdom without, so again, to just go over that, to have wisdom free of method, one is chained. And to have method free of wisdom, one is chained.
어다 솔로가 야도 구바데 구바 깜파 땅분이 되게 가르라고 그러잖아 랑기 잡아 지워져 봐스 답에 나제 냠바 곰베 파연 숨바들이 다 윤동 가서 제가 택바 민다 택바 신데 쉬울 깨치 못 잡아라 미스스 개월라
Kare Kyokchampore?
택바 민자다 택바 신데 깡것던 등이르고 알아 게다 첨부용야다 민 첨부용야라 돈 등이르고 알아 민주 깡가 나제 냠바거나 따뜻 용 말레스 때 지금 말레스 택바 지워져 봤대 민다 게다도 배 매제니 배 미지징 들어와 배 미치고 알아 용거레스 때텔라 거래 파인 숨바더라다 나제 냠바 곰베 파인 숨바데 랑기 때바 지워져 봤어
And so now we go into the third benefit of equalizing self and others, and that is when one is no longer in that kind of mindset and there's an equanimity, there's no need to really look for any pats on the back, any fame or renown, any reason to seek for one's own self-importance or to be well-known and famous, to gain a name for oneself. All this is kind of not within the playing field when one has this kind of great equanimity. And so we're on verse number 109, the first two lines.
대타르 쟁기 던지경 논센다니 모처럼에스 숭도아 답에 나진 냠바 투바티 디 켄체니 아니 젠딘 잡아라빠 가베거니 쪼가야지 아니 디 네체인 선데 캥바당 롬센당 객바당 근데 균용 용고 말해 가르잖아 젠전을 타지도 좋선로 와 제와 니 집에 디우관에 젠드마도 삼로 땅에요 말해 딘다 민다 객바다 때서 균매간 차소래 민다 때발 타이나 지든 죽이던 데서 와 어다 띠인들가 시부지 개침도 와
And so in the text, the work of bringing benefit to beings will not then make me proud and self-admiring. And so due to having already completed the process, really accomplishing a new mindset of things being on such an equal playing field, due to that condition, now when one helps others, it is that in itself that makes one happy. That is the reward. That is one's happiness. One doesn't go about saying, oh, look what I did this or that. that's no longer at all even a concern. It doesn't even come into one's mind because one is so far on the other side of really simply only caring about others. That concern really never even comes into one's mind. One is so far into a caring, compassionate, empathetic mindset that oneself never even comes into the equation. So there's never any, reason to kind of, attach one's name to a good deed or anything, to be like known for doing something and to have other people know you did it. And actually to kind of gain a name for oneself is one of the 8 worldly concerns. But when one has really worked with this mind training and has already equalized oneself, this just does not come into the equation at all. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So as soon as it's become important for us to attach our name to something, or the reason that we're doing something is to kind of have people know about it, to get fame or gain for it, this is something that just feeds our own self-cherishing, that really, pumps up our own self-admiration. And the moment that that has happened, actually the moment that we wish to be known for having done something, then it hasn't really, this is an act, like an action or a path of activity that is not real Dharma. Mm-hmm. And so in the last 2 lines in 109, the happiness of others is itself my satisfaction. I do not expect another recompense. And so now we're getting down to what is real bodhicitta, what is actual and authentic bodhicitta. Because when we have, we accomplish some, virtuous activity, we engage in virtue with a thought of some kind of karmic fruition or any kind of own return, something that we will get in return. If we are at all involved at that level, like if we're expecting, okay, oh great, I'm going to get a great karmic fruition, this is something that is just working with and strengthening our own self-cherishing. And if we think, oh, I'm going to get some kind of reward, or I'm going to get something in return for doing this, again, this is reinforcing self-cherishing. And so we can see that once again, although on the exterior they may appear as virtuous activities, that it hasn't really gone to be real dharmic activities, real Dharma path, and certainly not the Dharma of Mahayana, of the great vehicle. But if we have really worked with our minds and truly accomplished equalizing ourselves and others, again, something like this, the wish for some kind of karmic fruition or getting anything in return, will never come into play here if we have really accomplished equalizing self and others.
내가 지는 뒤시다 어떻게 니 랭겐 니 지가 이제 송도 렌던 민나 미라킨 답 미상부지네 연구도 민감바지네 연구미도한테 니 랭겐을 랑미도 그따다도 알아 진진 수수체 영엔데기 아니 배 민당 잭바당 땀라 저접체 잭바제 깨다침보
Dianne Shompa?
어떻든지 땀년자라 저접침보요 랑진지 지금 수초인데 대달 저접대서 요마래 어때 대바 전부 최진양은 제가 랑진진 dombi 켄체네 아니 근데 남일라 말해와 아니 근데 기미 배 지진 들어와 미 야보시고 아니 배들이 전다기 된다 제주나 티코갑인 티가 배 선음 사이게 고갑지 야보시 중소 삼삼때 그 후르고마다 나 민첨부 지금 그래서 삼도 기니 당거 말해
And so again, things about, looking further down the road for some kind of a result, or getting something in return, some kind of reward or some kind of return. This is something we might see very much so in a worldly sense, those people that are out there that just really operate on a very mundane and worldly level, that they might say, oh yeah, no, don't worry, you don't owe me anything for it, I'm happy to do it. But in the back of their mind, they're kind of expecting, it's like greasing each other's palms, so to speak, that later on it will, come back favorably for them. But not necessarily all the time, because then there are some that are really, truly and sincere. No, you don't owe me anything. No, don't worry about it. Happy to do it. And really do it for authentic and sincere reasons. But what this really comes down to is whether, that, person is self-involved, is self-cherishing, is thinking about themselves, about a name, or being famous, getting renowned for something, recognition for something. But for someone who has really worked with their own mind and emotions, has really decreased the self-cherishing attitude, actually has worked so, and really trained in this, where there is no difference, there is an equanimity. That self-cherishing has been tied up, it's been pacified, it's no longer on the horizon. So for them, once we accomplish this, that thought of, oh, I hope I get famous, I hope people know that I did that, that doesn't even come into play. One might acknowledge the great merit in doing something, but it'll never come to one that I hope I get, named for doing this, acknowledged, appreciated. It just won't come into play.
민라 레와게 딱발라 레와게니 지제와데 총바저리 차라 총겹디 갈라 파페셔트니 투치 잘라더라고 어와 디너지 차바르데 망베체데 데네 마레 민당 다 데나니 소 개바침 비치데 민당 텍바 디조페 란친진 dom고디 갈라 이 민다 텍바 생데 란친진데 시보진 레와침보 인자 고 dom고도와 시운네 침보도와
And so, if one were to do some kind of a activity and one expected to get named for it, become renowned for it, or get something, in return, then this is a transaction. Then this is business. It's like when we do business. We do something, but we expect to get something in return. This is business. And if that's the case, then it's not real Dharma. And so if it's, at all attached, to these two, then it's a transaction. And it's not Dharma. And that's why it's said that we really need to work to reel in and kind of tie up these two, any concern for like name or fame. So that's why it's really important to kind of get these under control.
Yeah, that those Gwen Tange Karma Changa Chuchi.
Okay. Okay, so okay, so let's take a break here. Geshe says, take what you need. Maybe we'll take about 10 if you were to need 15, but let's take what we need for a break at this point. Okay, Geshe.
Hello.
Hello. So we have the Guru Puja.
Yeah.
Culture dire semchen rere cheriang
Narme Mengen Kaba Yasu Nekoyang Nije Mikyo Chanju Chotzunde Zundi Perchins of Perchingilops.
Okay.
Zundi Perchin Tape Yanin Chetan the Din Sungor. Chanju gets some good to the pay Chimbodoa. Nije sing the Shuj get Chimberta. Chanju is some Gulake Maketa Nijil Rad, Nije compelled on Romatuna. Chanju is some care Molam Gayamara. In the Karan Dodiganala, it's our Nijin de Lari. Chanju is some Zawadi Nije to race.
So I don't know if everyone is back, but a little while ago, Geshe gave a quote that was in the Guru Puja, and I loosely translated it, and I translated Geshe-la's explanation on it, but I did find it in Tibetan here. And so as Geshe had said, it is the verse on diligent effort, inspiring one into diligent effort. And it says, even if we must remain for oceans of aeons in the fiery hells of Avicii, for the sake of one sentient being alone, we seek your blessings to complete the perfection of joyous effort, to strive with compassion for supreme enlightenment and not be discouraged. And so here, Geshe is saying again, the real foundation of this is bodhicitta. And actually the power of bodhicitta is really incredible. It's, really has great powers. And whether one can have bodhicitta relies on if one has compassion. And so when compassion grows, it grows into bodhicitta. So we can see bodhicitta relies on compassion. And so without compassion, there is like no saying like an aspiration prayer that one, can develop the mind of enlightenment. So one needs compassion. And in the ornament of the sutras also, it says that what is the root of bodhicitta? The root of bodhicitta is the compassionate mind. And so again, we see that it all starts with cultivating compassion. Okay. Oh, lasso.
Ngaya simjing tunjela tede pordun nimber shoza molam gegdo.
Yeah.
Shwish ke chambora te chanju sem yonatende losop chambu shwish ke gor. Sim nane puba chambule gor.
So then also in regards to the mind of bodhicitta, then there's a verse in the 10th chapter, I think it might be 55 or verse 56. But in any event, it says, as long as space endures and as long as sentient beings remain, may I too remain to dispel the sorrows of the world. And so we know that, as long as space remains, how long will space remain? A very long time. And really, so one's pledge to dispel the suffering of beings is that long. So I think it's 55, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 55. So the thought would never, to pray like this, to have such an aspiration would never even arise for someone who didn't have bodhicitta. You have to have such incredible bodhicitta for such an aspiration to ever arise in your mind. Mm-hmm. So really important to go back over these verses, reread them. Geshe is saying, review them, reread them. Really important to just keep reading this.
규젠 되게 공도시비 규젠 되게 되나 나중에 받아가서 옴투부도 왔어 옴투브레스 소식줄에 근데 고미하게 니바데 헤투브레스 숨도 데로와서 곰나 라르 마기도 뭐다가 요마 인자다 가마 로서 준준나라 곰팔레나 야니양도 곰팔레나 티니 고 나랑서 땅분이 개들에 MBC 싱잉 지키기오 말와 지구 랍장 곰발랩주네 처음에도 랍 두고도 왔다 대소리지리 딜라거다.
So now we come to the fifth point. The last one was the fourth point, which was the verse when we read on the having no hope for any return or any fruition to become famous, etc. That was the fourth point. Now here the fifth point is, so now we understand all of these reasonings on the benefits of why seeing ourselves and all other beings is absolutely the same as equalizing ourselves and others. Now we are able to familiarize ourselves with it and really habituate it. Now for each of us, this is something that we can really all individually work with and really have this new perspective as part of your inner landscape. Really have it be something that is just part of your thinking, part of your mind stream. And just like Shantideva said in an earlier verse in this text, there is nothing that through familiarization that will not become easy. It really comes down to repetition and familiarization. We need to familiarize with something again and again. Think about the first time you heard, the alphabet. And when you learned the alphabet, you began to learn the ABCs, but, you didn't know them, really. You didn't fully know them yet. It took, repetition and familiarization, different trainings, different study, and then you knew them, inside and out. It just becomes something that becomes completely known to you, very familiar to you. And the same thing can become part of the inner landscape here, but it takes familiarization.
시식 균이 개기어 말 균이 내가 간대지잖아.
And so, this is, Geshe is saying, like when he entered, like when we enter as young students, to be really, how to call it, like really studious when a subject matter was presented, saying, I am going to get this. I am going to study. I'm going to get it. I am going to get this. And then you apply yourself really, really hard and say, I'm going to get it. I'm going to figure this out. And, when we work really hard and are inspired in this way, we can learn, anything. And Geshe really warns us against the mindset of saying, this isn't for me. I bet, I'm no good at math or something, that kind of an attitude. I'm no good at this. Probably not, in my wheelhouse. I'm, not going to go after this. Absolutely not. Go in there with the attitude that I'm going to figure it out. I can do this. I can get it. Just like the Buddha and all of the other great practitioners and masters that followed. I can do this too. I absolutely can do this, and go after it like that. Really important to stay way away from that other attitude that thinks, I can't do it. The pessimistic attitude. Very important to stay away from that.
Kale mala long tuji mala zotens. Kale chicken na any shape tuji ton tugres. Zamjagi omar. Can't you send the tronang da Popa live got the missive ketchum to Popa the Shibu ketchembore. Popa yabo joina. Tenipe carine chetugre. Popa pe ketchemborda.
La so di dampe kare
Kale mala long chuna tuji mala zotens. Kale chicken day na. Any zota tuji the ton to grace. Tamponing Chetuku Marane Chichiga Sarvatini Tuji Zotaya Yadu Tentake Omara.
Yeah. So there's a saying, a Ladakhi saying that goes something like through slow and steady progress, there is anything can be accomplished. And what this means is really, when we apply ourselves and stick to it, don't give up. That's the thing. Slow and steady wins the race. Don't give up. It's about having that like zest and saying, I can do it. A real confidence and perseverance, kind of a go-getter. And actually, if you have that, whatever it is, you can accomplish anything. It's about having that attitude that persists and doesn't give up.
Yeah, that's all we get the chupa.
Okay, so now we'll resume in the text at verse number 110.
Dajing Yamba Gom Ribe Pine Abadi. David Jitter Chuna Minion Legan Zasunwa. Tijin Jilla Sunsenta Nijisini Letter Sundwa. That Tarzana Dajing Yamba Gom Rigre Karchini Gom Rigrizana Maranzo Pe Tonta Chunchunji Pensi Minion Bajijuna. Donda chimo maina donda chunjung ti minya ba juna tela ni pe chi samlu tang cho ji jani tela kanje o di susu ta di lokombe wan te minya ba de tangbo minya ba ji kyungna kale komsona di minya ba de any nije wanga could say that the Nijiri said be Dichibaina, Pena Pama and Be Jamsi Chenjigi, Boo Kazajing Bolazana, Pamatiki, Be Tela Mizuba Jigimidoa.
Pena?
Pena Pama Jamchon Chenji. 아마 니지단 된 되긴지 부기 시가 가절로나
올라서
밥 집에 꺄마도 대랑엔 심 지금도 오다 때나 진짜 그 니제 왕게 깔깔 니지로 겁나 니제 왕게 깔깔 뜻도 간가 근데 민년바다 깔깔 엔베 저투그리스 충다지나 딘디지네 조그 엔베 공구 엔베 진 첨보라 zuba 저신 랩그와 니지 타벨잖아 뭐다 대충 거래
Okay, di dunsen ngapa eh.
전쟁 아빠들이
Okay. And so now in the
다다진 냠바 옴리비 유전디 아빠들이 거래 파이는 아빠들.
And so now we have the fifth benefit here, which speaks about the logical sense of practicing equalizing self and others. You know, something here that really makes very, very good sense and something we can apply to ourselves and our experience. Again, we're on verse number 110. Where it reads, therefore, just as I defend myself from even slight disparagement, in just the same way with regard to others, I should likewise have a mind protective and compassionate. And so when, you know, we hear someone that says something negative, or a put down about ourselves, this is something, you know, that we don't take to, you know, necessarily very well. Actually, we get very defensive about these kinds of things, even if it's just kind of like a meaningful gossip. It isn't even anything like important. It doesn't even make sense, but somebody says, you know, disparages us, says something negative about us. And then, you know, what we really need to develop instead of getting hurt by it, defensive about it, is just saying, oh, you know, gosh, you know, look what they're saying. You know, I feel so bad for them. You know, it's really, you know, so bad. And really having compassion for the people who are doing it, actually. You know, maybe there's someone who's just, you know, gossiping and trying to stir up the pot. And instead of getting personally affected and defensive, having compassion for the people who are doing it. And there's also a way that we can like learn to train and not be so triggered and affected by it. If you think about how a parent might scold or reprimand their child, it's really out of love. It's really out of wishing to help them so that they learn what they should not do. You know, they might use mean words or be really harsh with them, but it's out of love that they're scolding them. And so these people who are doing it, if we begin to look at them like a parent who is scolding their child out of love, and we begin to regard them in that way, it doesn't have the personal effect on us anymore. And actually, we can, the more opportunities we have to do that, the more familiar we'll be with it. And therefore, when we hear something, that's the way we'll regard them instead of someone who's trying to hurt us. And so when we really familiarize ourselves with this, it'll be very easy. Little things, big things, when people say about us, you know, they won't trigger us because we will have become like built up such a tolerance to it. We will be really tolerant and just view it in a different way and be able to forbear it. And so we will become very, very patient people if we can work with this.
사회 subject sumba 라진냠바 곰베 파윤데 파윤달라 나세기 subject 마중에 나가서래 다 사회 subject 지바 하게 가르잖아 지바 다진냠바 곰나 델타키니 바라래다 다 사회 subject 지바들이 subject 지바 라진냠바 곰나 히누그레스 히투그레스 랑이글레 케투그레스
Okay, tuku레.
다티 다 다진 베 콤팔레 고로 마콤나네 가버마도 꼼나 뺄래라버려 꼼나키 수수길래 기룬 차리어레스 히투그레스 순과래 다텔라 쇼로게 니우도 야단 주지 주니니가 용거래 다 당부 맞아 주지 받아 그지시나 곰바인니 젠다기 쿠와타기 디발라 노브메퍼 유르강니 자코지니 셰파타르스 와타테 카르라 고르잖아 마란조 타 디치디갈라 로 콤베왕그레스 콤베왕기 콤바 페 다진 제바다 콤바 슈촌보 주나 깨투그레 가르전에 깨투그레잖아 베르나 나랑도 루이테 와스 코아 타기 디발라세도 코아 세데갈라 파이 코아드체 타세데 마이 다센체 다 남시데 파르테 남시데 텔라 에니페 파기 코아다 마겔 다센인디니 나랑도 루이테 투버 와스 제자 파기 코아다 마겔 다센이 수수 리차야라 딱 티니 파기니 나네 네페니 순데 콤베왕기 단다 네 루이즈 데 치치체 중구도 와스 이 콤베왕니 얼마도 마콤발레 때쯤 말했을라래 ngopu me prinjuanen ta parto illusido parto illusio parto magil dasen julion de gala kolo lui parto lide ji tene namse de tin rugo magil dasen rugo arwa maingalna wada ti ni tela ni pagi kwada mal dasen de en lui chaparwa 제가 그 뭐봄 맹행지 주고 차도와 뭐봄에 버는 교와데 라고지니 셰발타르스 라그 루이즈데 같이 셰지 용도 관라래 닝지부도와 어때나진지 젠된 젠라니 제베 짱나 가라에스나 에니페 수수 디마르데 수수 때라 부부투던 텐데라 견자 주나 빼 제와 레기도 와. 또 꼼배 왕기 중으로 와. 좀더 연구도 와. 어디다 되네지? 꼼바 중나티 차 연구를 라브래.
And so that was the fifth quality of a benefit of equalizing self and other. When we were looking at that subsection here of the qualities of equalizing, seeing the equality in all living being. And so now, kind of in a broader context, we've been going through like root categories here, and we're now entering like into the fourth root category, which is in regards to that we are able, the ability for this to become part of our mind stream, to really integrate this and familiarize with this. So this is kind of the fourth like root category that like subcategory that we're entering into here. But in any event, this is in regards to how we have habituated to certain things. And the first we look at verses, so this is in regards to verse 111 and 112. How have we like come down with this like these like concepts and notions? How have we habituated them? And we first look at verse number 111, where it says, the drop of sperm and blood belonged to others. Yet, through strong habituation, I came to have in its regard a sense of I, though in itself it is devoid of entity. So what's being said here? So we have a really strong sense of self, a really strong sense of an I. And why is that? A lot of this is based on having this physical body. Based on having this physical body, we have habituated this sense of I, this notion of an I. But let's backtrack here and look at where this body came from. So we have the sperm of the father and the ovum of the mother. And so that come together. And actually backtracking from that, so first there is the Bardo consciousness. The Bardo consciousness that then enters the womb of the mother, and then there is conception. So we have sperm and we have ovum, we have conception. Then we have a body. Then there is this beginning of a form. And this is what we identify with. And we say, I. And therefore we say, this is my body. But actually, this has only come from our own conceptual habituation. This is really not the case that it is like my body, that this is something that is a single was in the Bardo before conception. It was consciousness. There was no form associated with it. There was no body. And then it wasn't until the point of conception, in the womb, before that, there was no body. There was no one. There was nobody we consider this me, this I. It wasn't there. There was not this entity. And so just like it says in the fourth line, though in itself it is devoid of entity, this is something we have become to habituate because of this physical form we have that we now call it an I. But if we backtrack, we can see it was sperm and it was ovum, and at one point it was just consciousness. And so this is something that we have habituated to, I, my body. Just like as when we have like our own child, how we have great love for our own child. Again, we identify this as our child, and therefore we have like this great love. And again, this is something, of course, that just comes from like reifying and re-identifying with something again and again and again. It becomes a very, very strongly habituated in this concept.
저선 버터 주의시에데 왕복군산 토메 유라브레 왕복군 상대겐 왕복군 상대어레 왕복차선 상대어레 아니 때양 토지르베도 토지 말을라래 거바카사 토메든로 듣고 와라 토사데 마인 알당 리가보리라브라마도 토그멜라래 네도제든 대수마도 토그멜라래
Manyaldang ani meru.
That dilagore. 저선다 남시 마인알 라 차용디가라 부게이나 다등이 저들 랍샤고다 니네 요마레 양께서 준준 메켄질라고들라고 삼네 날준데는 살포요레 부게게나 말라차 팔라당 되니 예 초된디 거랑 아주 락바 예바 초대 많이 알고나 예 초대 나와 차르고 되리
카레 예초
많이 알려로 알게 예 초대
올라서 많이 알기 예초
예 초대
올라서
가르잖아 부기디가라 팔라 당과다 그 생지바를 되어라 생지바인데 말아 니 생타대 인상 말아 차심기 거래. 아니 지구 깨나 마데 또서 불러 선다녀 용 거래. 말 부디 말아 선다녀.
Contattice pomento.
마데 불 센다 녀요래
Semtanye.
셈 도서 도서 다 제와 체요래
Ola so magi bula.
마기 불 제와 체요래
Oh, okay.
북의 파상 말로 도서 제와 체요래
Uh-huh.
디니 부모께이나 말로당 마천지 바인자 파 도서 당심 기거래 팔아 차거래 여마니 파데 부모로 도서 선다nye 불로 도서 선다 제와도 요르데 이나 도서 개버려래
Lasso.
야자망아데 개버려래
Dine de kapsu yang ani di magi nyalgi yonchola.
연철인데 거래 딩가준 데나 배 살보여 ngaljugun 도여 딩 살보여 아니 배 둔다나 루투상 투루테서 배 살보여다 tartar bonun nurbote so tuta kanje dun normally na sumchi subdun tendijire dunda sumchi subdun dawu ngoichu nimachu dawu de nimachu mengal na de gorwa tindi ma katin chembo inda tere
Dawachu dang nimagu.
nimachu
Nimachu. So in regards to this Bardo consciousness, this Bardo being that is without a physical form, it is said that it is like the faculties are complete, but it is without physical form. And it also has the ability to move about unobstructedly. So there's nothing that can obstruct it or stop it except for two things, a womb or Mount Meru. And so we think about the case that if the Bardo consciousness enters a womb, if a baby is to be born, then first of all, if it is attracted to the mother, so this Bardo consciousness, if it is attracted more towards the female, Gondak,
Bulikeina, Mala Sesemke, Palatos Dangore.
Mala ke na dene bugu kedu dene di bu.
Pucheina, Pudi Mala Tosa Zewacheum.
Okay. So if it is attracted to the mother, to the female aspect, then it then will be born as a male. And it also then, during conception, it takes conception within the right side, like towards the right side of the mother's womb. And so it will be born as a male, and then if it is attracted to the father, then it will be born as a female, and it will take conception within the left side of the mother's womb. And let's look more at that. So for that Bardo consciousness that is attracted to the female, to the mother, to that which will be their mother, it will be born as a male. And because it is a male, because it is the same sex as a male, it has some slight aversion to the father. So the Bardo consciousness, seeing its future parents in union, will have a little bit of an aversion to the father because it is of the same sex, and it will be more attracted to the mother. If the Bardo consciousness is attracted to the father, it is a female, it is slightly averse to the mother because it is of the same sex. It will be born as a female. it is of the same sex. So there's a slight aversion to the father. Yeah, I hope I said that correctly. So also then, mothers tend to be somewhat closer to their sons and fathers somewhat closer to their mothers. There's a kind of special closeness, in regards to this. And so actually this is all so much of what happens between like conception and the embryo and the baby growing. The fetus's growth is set out within the sutra. There's a certain sutra that really sets this out month by month. What's happening within, this process of after conception, or with conception and post-conception, the 37 weeks that it then takes of conception. And here they go through 10 months and 10 days of like change and transition. Oh, going back 9 months and 10 days. 9 months.
같이 양물라 깨거라. 그 normal 다와 구당 님의 주된 normal래. 대마 같이 물라 깨거라 같이 죽을라 깨거라. 다 레담더니 현담은 부지 등구로와.
Sorry, 9 months of pregnancy. So these 9 months of gestation, 9 months and 10 days. And Geshe says that, so this is what is set out, but this is just the average, what is kind of the normal kind of a time frame. There can be some babies that are born sooner, and there can be some that are born later.
다들 마기 루기 줍자당 다들 시부지 개발만 보래. 레당 루기 줍자당 된게 개발 차고 그래.
So there's a lot to do karmically. So this has to do, so in terms of the length of gestation, this has to do with karma. It also has to do a lot with the physicality of the mother that's carrying the baby.
뭐다 두스레다. 이 나중도나 살보라. 나중도 예든이여래. 점단데 근주날 빼 살보야래 되거든.
So there are actually 2 sutras in regards to the, the womb, the development within the mother's womb of the baby. And so there are 2 separate sutras written that the Buddha, in regards to what the Buddha said in regards to this. And it's actually set out very, very clearly in detail within those 2 sutras.
Yeah, 저는 도마증 연구에서 또서 개발이 여기래. 아마도서 또서 또서 부모를 또서 제와체 부트서 바바 있는데서 불리 또서 부모를 제와체 여기래. 연구를 거기 남시 인삼 저든이 개발이었대. 이견래.
So it's really, true the way we see like very special connections between, like a special love, a special connection between mothers and sons and fathers and daughters. And so it's very interesting, and it really goes back to the specificality of that Bardo consciousness before conception. And we can really see that there is often this very kind of specialness, special love.
다들 최세선이지래. 야, 다다 되기도. 다 중이 받대. 야다 중이 받대. 대신 생기 류라 양스. 라지 지 칠미송. 라그 류니 젠다도 자바타트라 까메스 다 꼼마꼼에 개발마다 꼼나 징기류라 제와 캬이지 때 강알 용우 말을라다.
Now we have verse number 112. And so why not identify another's body, calling it my I, and vice versa? Why should it be hard to think of this, my body, as another's? So really, we've gotten very used to identifying with this form as me, but we could just the same through equal habituation and repetition completely identify that we are other and other is us. It really comes down to what we have familiarized with and really habituated. We could just as easily habituate that others are I.
Yeah, that people do that. So it's subject tambu. Vajin nyamba gomyade. That's hard. That subject nyamba vajin jepas. That nyamba tamar. That jerky. Some tangore. That the shed chadiore.
So up until this part, now this was all, so within the two we have equalizing self and others, seeing ourselves and others as completely the same and equal, or trading, exchanging oneself for others. So we have these two categories. We're now finished the trainings and instructions on equalizing self and others, and now starts exchanging self and others.
당원에 다진 냠바 곰들 곰세다 다진 냠바 시행도 갈라 조조데 룽알데 강가 강아주 순리지나 다다 제니가 룽알 생인데 능은지 수지요 말와 룽알 민도 바충 대원도 바충 때 섬을 nem부 당구도 가지 톱당 단다래 되죠와
라
톱당 단다래 되어와 룽알 민도 바 톱당 단다 대원도 바 톱당 단다 톱당 단다 인진도 젠케도 세과지 미도가시 돈다 누나 텐디지래.
So in regards to us all being the same, principally what we have been looking at is we're all the same in that be it me or you or all others, we don't desire difficulty and suffering. We're all exactly the same when it comes to that. And that we all want to find happiness and be happy. We're all exactly, me, you, other, we're all exactly the same in that. And we have equal rights, we're all, we equally have the right to wish so, to wish to be happy and not to suffer. Our right to do so, be it me or you or others, all exactly the same.
대 양양도 섬마다나 맞죠 가르잖아 란진지 시라슈 중보 인자 젠기 대화세대 젠라 랭게는 마동할 때 젠기 대화도 비알라 랭게 오마르다 삼도 슈 중보 그러고도 가르잖아 안도 길라 란진지는 시부지 로콤바 침보 알아 되게 괜찮기도
So we really have to work hard at this because this is something that is not going to change for us all of a sudden, that we feel, see others as equal. Absolutely not, because this is something that, that our own, that we ourselves are the most important thing, is so ingrained in us that we're really going to have to work against this, because we've really ingrained it. So we're going to have to read this, we're going to have to practice it, we're going to have to habituate to a new way of thinking, a new way of being, a new way of seeing things. Because right now, the way it is for us is we think that, we watch out for our own backs, but we think for others, well, that's their problem. That's their responsibility. That's not, I don't have anything to do with that. That's not my concern. That's really strong for us. And so we really have to work against it, because we have become so used to just caring about our own agenda.
근데 이거라다 겨울무지개 승무도 미진규 삼당 고래스 제가 나중에 한번 보면 이나 미진규 삼도도 전부 히트 두비야도 말하면서 미강가 배돈 너든 두비야 진규를 임받을 게 두고도 대마도 맞아 가르포즈데 나포즈데 이신즈데 초들이도 보지 채도 다 대원데 봐 지성이 누만민도 봐 지성인데도 수지 삼당도 갈라 미진규기 삼로 겨울무지 공부지도 아주 유진하네 당보도 미진규기 드셔야 돼 숨도와 쉬우게 첨부르셨대 삼당나 겨울무지 공배 통고도 할레벨 링보래 와다티 삼당당 되니 미진규스인데 아니면 초리기 야와매야 돼 게게단 바용사래
So His Holiness the Dalai Lama also always points out the importance of seeing all humanity as one brotherhood. We are one people. We are the same. We are one people. And he cautions against seeing any differences in, for example, seeing Asians or seeing Westerners, making any of those distinctions, but rather seeing one humanity, seeing the sameness in the fact that everybody wants and deserves happiness. Everybody doesn't desire pain and misery and suffering. Really seeing that sameness, seeing that as that which is part of the humanity of all people. If we can take what we've been learning here of equalizing, these trainings of equalizing ourselves, really being equanimous, having no bias or partiality, together so taking these trainings together with what His Holiness tells us all the time, we are one brotherhood, we are the same, we are one humanity. This is something that will guaranteed will, retrain us, turn things around for us. We will be able to see that oneness.
중과도 지난래 겨래 달롱아서 갱감받 내음 되기 전에 중과도 전제야 빨리 가버쳐서래 저 겨울무지 온반하신지 아주 삼다 미진규금이 뒤시 삼다 점불링 미진규금 뒤시 삼다야 출루라니 배 랑기 최들라 대바타는 대바지 쟁기 출루라 따낭자네 출루 툰델리오엘라 탑시제야 돼 쉬우지게 쳔버리 초다리 윤치기요 말이 대백게 쳔버리
가래 치기요 말이
초다리 개발 맞체지 랑기 출루지어와 랑기 출루라 못쳐베고네 대바지 쟁기 출루라 에네베 따낭장거리 따낭 누르베오지 캡소나 티니 빼때가 개발해요 말에 미순데지 가네지 투소나 셈나 토낭레기리
So now we're approaching the birthday of His Holiness, actually. And so it's really difficult, in terms of celebrating and so forth because of the pandemic at this time. It's a very challenging time, and His Holiness's birthday approaches. How is it that we can actually commemorate His Holiness's birthday? How can we celebrate this, recognize it, and commemorate it? We can do what His Holiness is always teaching on, is seeing this as one world, as one humanity, as one brotherhood. And as seeing in terms of the different spiritual traditions, yes, have faith to your own tradition, but then also work to be harmonious with other religious traditions, spiritual traditions as well. So the tradition that one takes as their own religion or tradition, yes, have faith, and one can perhaps, introduce others and be an example of that religion or faith. But then to all of those other spiritual religions and faiths, then one should have complete pure vision and be really unbiased. One should be impartial and unbiased, have faith to your own religion, but also pure vision to others. And in this way, that whoever you meet can enter into, very just meaningful, open conversations and experiences together.
간식 여러분이 둥근 지어송도 로미 미차니 니강가 징기르긴 두시 이지게기 랭겐직 줄루 둔랭기 랭겐직 나니 베게 코리우 순겹제겔 둥겐직 아니 베 갸가르기 리중제나미도 다 나렌지 리중 베 잠제 리중데 캬벨당야 와다 디 지도아 따테 코리오 다 베게 코리오도 가서 니인데 개치도 고 말데 라라네세 코리오도 짱마 야보치데 니제가 있나 여름부지 까투고 거래 코리오 짱마 째데 빼미스 코리오 코리오 짱마 째데 빼미스베 개침부지리 코리오 럼밥도 마드서지 아니 기미카 간중마중 말루기지 때 가서 툭툭 코리오 짱마 냐래데 시부지 개침보래 어다 여름부지 까테 두이나 드니 빼미스베 개침부지 있지라 니 여름부지 지송도 니 출루디 니지 출루 인승송도 아니 타는 무슨 인지라 제와 장지 니지 캡벨도 당해데 빼미스베 개침보래 대마도 안 가서 여름부지 까데 마두비지 여름부지 퉁가르지 볼래 깨징게데 자네 고바테좀 두고 말해 여름부지 까투비야데 빼미스베 개침보래 데 기부탄발 로달 댕에 남주 연댕에 개박 빼 남주 강가 연댕인데 주로 간지 라마 쳔모데서 까타가라는 그래 근데 뚝당 빼미스베 맞았다 고방 엄마데테리 여름부지 대승다 미치기 여름부지는 퉁가르 차다라 가라고 어두스 스데 여름부지 나 퉁가르 차다 전다게 먹었어 그런서 니징이 않는지다 땡은 퉁가르 차다 인서 가는 거 어다 빼게 전보래 당가서 빼 맞아 텔레간다 여름부지는 숨지지 여름부지 때빠자고 땀지 다나에 돼 여름부지 까두고 하다 빼면서 게 전보래
So His Holiness the Dalai Lama is always saying that he really spends his life very committed to accomplishing four important things, four focuses for him. And that number one is that he sees himself as a person of humanity. And so to do right and support within that humanity is one of his focuses. Ani dene dunsani bachuluk
줄루 둔델 숨바데 코리오 숨교
yeah. And that his second is to really work within this world to bring harmony between all of the different religions. That is his second focus. The third is to protect and preserve the environment and in Tibet, or in Tibet. But Geshe-la is saying that he also, His Holiness is always saying it's not just Tibet. He has a real commitment to focusing on environmental issues, to really make sure that the environment is protected everywhere, so that we are not just doing crazy things here and there and whatever we want that are destroying this, precious earth, this precious environment. And then his fourth commitment is to preserve the texts and the teachings of the Nalanda tradition. And so those are the four commitments of His Holiness. But again, when His Holiness always says, my religion is compassion, and my religion being compassion, then we wouldn't even bring harm to even the smallest little bug. Actually, having compassion for even the smallest little bug. And other than that, other than focusing on these things, then there's no other important way that we can observe His Holiness's birthday. If we want to observe His Holiness's birthday, the Dalai Lama's birthday, then we do that through accomplishing his teachings, accomplishing his advice. And so actually all of His Holiness is always saying, these same things. And, as well, the great masters, all of the great accomplished masters with great wisdom, great intelligence, actually come down to saying the very, very same thing. And so there was one person who asked His Holiness, they said, your birthday is coming up, and, what could I give you? How could I observe your birthday? What can I give you? And His Holiness said, what you can do for my birthday is to have compassion. Be compassionate. And so this is even His Holiness's wish. That's what He wants. And so what we should now do as followers is we can continue to listen to His Holiness's teachings and instructions, have trust and faith in these, and then actually go forth and accomplish them. That's what we can do.
오늘 니지 캐벨단 니지 그저 스스 유리 장이나
양케르책 야포 코모촌
니지 니지 냠네 양도 자이나 여러분이 지금 말해 라자 텀바테 퉁기 그래 자가 그 펜두 주든네 테 퉁기 그래 딸 에 오늘 지 거서 경우에 답에 데베상게 마음베상게 뒤숨상게 탐제 민기에 제용고 말해 강간예부 좀 그래 근데 스스로이나 셈 니지 귤을 대용도가라 셈나 뚜랑 말아질래 그래 아랑라이나 기부젠라 기부차 그래 아니 따때 마세베타 아메리게 가르서래 birthday the leg or 4th July American birthday marbe 4th July 창시다 마퉁지 개와다사 가서 툭툭 23당 은 근데 저번에 미거 저도 또 신용다 그게 저도 캠펠다 두시나 율레티기 마두 무게 메교 아니 내 나자 메교 근데 삼당에서 빼미스 깨침버려 뭐람게야 당도 뭐람게 마달래요 말다 네타 나자 메 지야당 아니
샹닥
아니 젠달라 오다 몰람 텐디 몰람 게데 페미스 깨침버려
라서 몰람 갑티가 디 네시야당
오 네시야당 마투 무게미요야 마투
디카레레 마투
저는 월
라가서
디상녀가 심부 쉬도와 네 지역에 삼도 다 몰람 게가데 페미스 깨침버려
So in regards to, this importance of compassion, it's not only His Holiness that emphasizes the development of compassion and how important it is. Actually, all of the past Mahasiddhas, all of the past, like Nalanda Panditas, all of the Buddhas of the past, the Buddhas of the present, the Buddhas of the future, the Buddhas of all the three times depended on exactly the same thing for their practice. It's compassion. This is what is to be developed. And when we develop compassion, when we have just this like booming, like this compassion that fills us, it's inspiring. And when it's inspiring, then this brings happiness to ourselves and others. This is the accomplishment of happiness. We feel happy and others feel happy when we're full of compassion. And so now Independence Day, the 4th of July, is around the corner here. And Geshe La then then asks us to be very, very cautious and advises us to please don't party and drink. Don't celebrate this by partying and drinking. Celebrate this by being more compassionate, by doing, virtuous activity. Go out and do something good, accomplish good, focus towards goodwill in the world. Look to increase the things, that are virtuous that you can be doing, and decrease the things that you do that are not virtuous. So please focus your efforts in that way. And also please at this time, say prayers, because we need prayers at this time. Say prayers that any wars or discord, political discord around the world, there's a real danger for that right now, is pacified. Pray and aspire that this coronavirus, this pandemic, is pacified. Prayer is very important, in particular in these areas at this time.
I can't do it.
Does anyone have any questions? So it's hard for me to tell, so someone speak up.
I have a question in regards to what you said about anonymity in verse 112, when His Holiness is talking about, like all of mankind is a brotherhood, like reconciling the ultimate view that, all beings have Buddha nature and we're all the same, with sort of the conventional problems that are happening in America with regards to racism, with regards to bigotry. Like as a Buddhist and as an American, I've always struggled with reconciling this view of like, yes, ultimately, samsara is temporary, ultimately you can say that, race and ethnicity and all these things are labels, but conventionally within people's habituation, like in American society, we have bigotry that goes back 400 years. We have, all these, Jim Crow laws and the genocide against the Native Americans, and with being sensitive to all the suffering that is happening, myself as an American, I've always had difficulty reconciling like what I see conventionally happening with how other people label everything versus what Buddha Dharma says about ultimate truth. I know it's kind of a big topic there, but I struggle with reconciling sort of this view of like one brotherhood with the, the conventional suffering that I see happening all around me in America.
Okay, Geshe-la. Okay, Geshe-la, dire. Di demba ni dangdra ware pena konsol dondam gi demba den nangla ani di sungiore ani semchen samala deshin ningpore di sangye ki kyuyore di hako song yena yang konsopla pena tengsangi nokdro di la di chore yerpa ki kangel pena di police ki pe duksha chaya di konsola semchen yore ani sangeki gyu yore konsola pena ngato semchen samala sewa chegore ninje kegore konsola sangeki gyu yore yanaya konsol ani lo beta mampo ringla ani dukcha chegi yore chebare de kola that's ngala kale kapo yore de kola kare samlo tangore
kale kapo da yor kale kapo yo zang nyamlin chegore e kom gore se sungdo kom kapo yo insan kom gore ma kapo mena kom goya yo marwa tati dire ran chinjin ngaran tuta 누초라 란친진 라 견치 징인데 베트가 요마와 카보와 란친진 다 던담당 군섭들까지 잔난다 마잔난다 뭐유 니출라 나나투 유라 상게리 강기줄래 요래 요래데 고 룽바 수수게 파게 칼처던데니 딘데세든 누구 말와 란친진 신디 투부에 슈 충부였나 디 골롱엔 지쪽으로 말 잡아이나 란친진 온게 제가 다다 란친진 온게 텐디 임바다 하고르드가라 대졸라 제와짱네 몰람데네 이 지역이 뒤지 유게 란친진 슈 충로야 다 몰람게데 시부지게 첨부래
Sugi Ramchinjin Anishan
다 샘진 수이규라 란치 골로치 땡인데 강가 란친진 슈 충부이베 란친진다 단지 말고 슈 충부이 그때 낀와 제가 몰람 게디가라 이 란친진다 단지 말이보다 계속 봐 슈충로에 몰람 게르마다 띵아서 짐바치다에 진다요 말에 미 게르수수빈데 와 규와땅나마도 다 텔바네 수수 하고에서 수수 따티 체동아도 냠는지네 카본두즈네 마사지 냠는지네 칼레토스게네 로콤바키 깨주야돼 시부진네 치무차디요 마실거는 가요 말 마고거나 가요 말이 맞아 고객이 마치바이나 고객이 되네 제나 골로제베네 빼사그러 맞아 하고 와라 란친진 현진바 하고 와래 단지 머리바 현진 리즈를 하고 와래 디나 머리비 주군로 란친진네니 빼 공부진데나 또서 분사 첨보라
Punta Chimbo and
어 너를 첨보를 빼 너르고 와래
Olaso.
다들
So
mamá chizingindela 시작 맞아 삼탕에요 말고 데스타린도 로드콩에요 말와 다 수수용원에 넣을면 제대 빼 미스부게 첨부래
so songoto.
랑궁원에 소소 랑진징이 지좀 말아 아니 빼 단지 말이 비지좀 가서 툭툭 롬미도 얘기 롬모가 탑시 제거래
So absolutely this is difficult. This is something that's difficult for us to come to grips with. Geshe says, this is something, again, you know, certain things have become very, very ingrained for us. And so, you know, whether we look at the difficulties that we're seeing in the West, you know, some of these, the riots and the police force for some of these difficulties, whether we look at them through the perspective of ultimate truth or relative truth, we can see that what it comes down to actually is like self-identification and self-clinging by the people who perpetrate or, you know, perpetuate these kinds of activities. So it's coming down and from their self-clinging. But if we take it to the point of the ultimate truth, in reality, yes, they do indeed have the potential of the mind of enlightenment. They are, you know, have the potential for Buddhahood. And, but at this point, due to really strong and thick self-clinging and identification and self-cherishing, being really identified with that, look at all of the malicious things that the, you know, people can do when they're coming from that kind of a perspective. They are filled with self-cherishing, ego or self-identification, and just ignorance, being really, really ignorant. And so, you know, this is something that is very, very difficult to change. And even for us, if we want to work with this, like our feelings, emotionally, mentally, what we're going through, observing this and coming to terms with this, this is something that we ourselves are going to have to train our minds with and work really, really hard. And, you know, what we can understand is that, you know, they don't know. They haven't realized that they're self-identified, that they have a strong identification with their self, they really have strong self-clinging, and therefore, you know, there's this onslaught of really of destructive behavior. They don't know, but we know. We have realized the harm that can come out of our actions when we're filled with self-clinging. So we work with our own self-clinging, and we make sure that our actions, words, thoughts aren't mistaken and perverted and perverse and malicious and so forth due to self-clinging and self-cherishing. But what we can do for them is to kind of pray for them, you know, that their self-clinging is something that they can come to know and obliterate. Also, Geshe said it's not terribly constructive to think back of all of the negative things that have happened in the past and all of the maliciousness and destruction and so forth. You know, we don't need to keep re-injuring ourselves and others by bringing this up again and again. But what we can do and what we can make as our goal is to identify this self-clinging in ourselves so we can work on our own and, you know, pray that this is overcome in others. Anyone else?
I wouldn't mind asking a question if we have another minute. I don't want to keep everybody late.
Okay, yeah.
So this is kind of like I guess a technical question. Geshe said that the Bardo consciousness could only be stopped by a womb or Mount Meru. What would happen to a consciousness that instead of moving towards a womb or being attracted towards a womb, would you attempt to move towards Mount Meru?
Okay, ani Geshe dire ani di kiranki sumbayam papena di Bardo namshi di togme gi namshi.
Mambu kunzan tome yulare.
Hola.
Zatawatsi kurante yare.
Ani di okay di tome yore yana di nyal dang ani rigyapo.
Oh.
Rigyapo matok ani togme re ani di kapsu pena di nyal dang trena di serpodo yana rigyapo dang trena ani kare chagere.
Tate tendenza ngala shemeta. Kachi pechena tendenci labiarta. Ini rigalbu nayani yomarwa rigalbu rirabzirde tongani yomarwa. Tako sama semgi mikabe kachaji ingiri ngaso tenden deshe game. Tako parto lui thomeche ani ta tendenci ilizana dige na kanche lui zujin chayomar zurakpa chayomar thojigi zujit chayomare.
And so Geshe says that actually he's not real sure about all of the details of what transpires in this second case scenario. So he is going to refrain from commenting on that. But again, this Bardo consciousness is called a subtle body Bardo consciousness that is unobstructed. So it, you know, it can move about unobstructedly. And so we've gone over what happens in terms of conception and what happens when it meets with the great Mount Meru is really something that is beyond comprehension, and also Mount Meru is something that is non-visible. So it's something that is very inanimate, and so it would be very hard to comprehend. But Geshe-la points out that it is said and so it might say somewhere in the scriptures, it might go more into detail about that condition of what happens if it meets with Mount Meru, but he's not familiar, and so will refrain from comment. But did want to also point out that the Bardo consciousness does not have a coarse body, but it has a subtle, imperceptible form, but does not have this coarse, visible form. And so due to karmas, though, due to karmic connection, if the Bardo consciousness has a karmic connection towards a mother and father, due to karmic connection, then it meets with the womb. Then it meets with conception. So it's really and so this the Bardo consciousness also is something that possesses like a comprehensive powers and factors of clairvoyance, of like a higher knowing, has clairvoyance.
I could ask questions about this all day, but I won't.
What?
I could ask many more questions about this, but I won't.
Okay. 그런 터들라다 터들는 바도 강갑 바도만로 개발 두시에요.
And so if you read the Book of Living and Dying, the Bardo Tudro, you can read about, there are 6, it goes into detail on the 6 different qualities of Bardo consciousness. So if you look in that text, in that book, and it is translated into English, you would be able to read about that.
Thank you.
Yeah. That was in Rojido, Yankee, so
So we're approaching 6 o'clock. So shall we break here? Shall we stop here?
Jema Yongude, Rajan Jedadi Yongorta, Tape Nenga Legiorta, Tos Shu Gibney, Pechalomato. Ranchin Kun, Jinchin Yun, then that's Jema Legre.
So now, the next part that we're getting ready to focus on, Geshe-la is saying, very, very important, and he wants you to really make effort here. Really, really put some, effort here in this next section. So it's time for us to really attend to it. So it will really be emphasizing how we need to actually de-emphasize self-clinging and emphasize other clinging, or other cherishing, self-cherishing, how we need to de-emphasize self-cherishing and focus on other cherishing. And he said he really thinks that this is such an important point to make especially diligent effort at this juncture.
Yeah. There. I'm watching Mare.
So you're probably getting tired, so we better finish here. It's almost 6 o'clock, Geshe says. So there's risk of you all getting very weary and tired. So let's dedicate.
Chanjo Zemjo Rimboche, Maki Pono, Kingurchi, Kawa Nyamba, Mebaye, Kone Kondo Pewara Show, Kari Rave, Kurvishin Comte, Penda Dewa, Malinjo. Cherezion Tenzin Gazo is Abe Site Pato, Tenguruchi, Jambu Pave, Chitra Kimbato, Kundo Zampo, Tianti. Yada Kunjejo Daluji, Bevandita, Tandera, Tumo, Tusum Shibi, Yawa, Tanji, King, Kama Chatumo. Rajin gave on the Kunja, Zambo Chichirato,
Bodichitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it has arisen, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. In the land encircled by snow-white mountains, the source of all happiness and benefit flows in your person. Shenle Zig Tenzin Gyaltso remain until samsara ends. Just as the Bodhisattva Manjushri obtained omniscience and as did Samantabhadra too, so now I dedicate these merits to train and follow in their footsteps. As all the victorious Buddhas of the past, present, and future praise dedication as supreme, so now I too dedicate these sources of my merit for all beings to perfect good actions.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Geshe.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Now think more.
So now analyze this more self-reflection on this. Do some analyzation. So now you're all scientists, okay? You're all researchers. It's time for you to, you're all research scientists, so now do some research and do some analyzation on this. Look at how great is this self-cherishing? Look at it. Analyze that. Does it hurt me? Does it help me? Look at that.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Take good care.
Thank you.